We're going to talk about Reform UK in the polls in just a second. Have they peaked? Have we reached peak Farage? But first, outrage and fury as 4.5 million people are to be denied the vote as more polls are axed, as the political boundaries of this country are changed at a local authority level. Well, let's get reaction now from Joe Twyman, who is the founder of Delta Poll. Good morning, Joe. Are the government justified in cancelling these local elections?
Well, justified is an interesting question. This is as a result of local government reorganisation, which is a complicated and very time-consuming process. I think the decision to let individual councils then decide whether they wanted to cancel the elections or not is perhaps the issue here. An alternative strategy would have just been to say, look, we're cancelling all of them, or we're cancelling none of them, or you've got to have things in place by then. But that wasn't what happened. In terms of public opinion, however, the average person in the street and the 50% of people less engaged than the average person in the street doesn't have a very good idea about whether their particular area is going to the polls this year or not. This is not a story that has made it into the top sort of 15, 20 stories being discussed last week. But as time goes on and more people realise that there is a change happening in their area, as more and more people become exposed to the details, it's likely that we'll see things fall along partisan lines. If you are a supporter of Labour or the Conservatives or whoever the incumbent is for your particular area, you might be more tolerant of, shall we say, delaying these elections for a period of time compared to those who support other parties.
Well, let's take a listen to the government minister responsible for this. This is Communities Secretary Steve Reid. Take a listen.
I can now confirm my decisions to the House. I have decided to bring forward legislation to postpone 29 elections. To those who say we've cancelled all the elections, we haven't. To those who say it's all Labour councils, it isn't. I've asked, I've listened, and I've acted. No messing about, no playing politics, just getting on with the job of making local government work better for local people.
There you go, Steve Reid. Meanwhile, another interesting polling story, and this features on page 2 of today's Daily Mail, Joe. Reform may have already hit peak popularity, polls expert suggests. What do you make of that? Have we reached peak Farage?
Well, we may have done, yes. The point is, nobody really knows. The polls are never a prediction of where we're going to be. They're only a snapshot of where we are at the moment. There are over 3 years until the next general election, we assume. Let's say 3.5 years. It's within 3.5 years that Boris Johnson was talking about his plans for his third term as Prime Minister. So an awful lot can change. But if you look at the long-term trends up until this point, what you see is that Reform have really struggled to break through the 30% barrier, not just over the last few weeks, but over the last few months. And the long-term trend suggests they might be falling back slightly. Now, that's for a number of different reasons, and those circumstances may change. But they have to overcome the fact that there is always going to be a constituency of people who will vote for their party no matter what. And if that's around sort of 20% for both Conservative and Labour, with a resurgent Green Party, it's difficult to see how the Reform get much higher. And at the same time, Nigel Farage has more than half of people with a very unfavourable view of him at the moment. That's higher than any other politician. And so it is a difficult situation for them to be in. But if the last 10 to 15 years of British politics have taught us anything, it's that nothing can be ruled out, and at the same time, nothing can be guaranteed. Reform have consistently, whether it's in their current incarnation or as the Brexit Party or as UKIP, seen plateaus in popularity, only to have things turned around by spikes as events change the situation. So we just don't know.
Do you think the return of Andy Burnham into the Parliamentary Labour Party and potentially the leadership of the party, could he improve Labour's fortunes?
He certainly could. The ratings around Keir Starmer are not great. His overall popularity is the worst of any of the political leaders at the present time. And Andy Burnham is popular in Manchester. But nationally, he's not particularly well known. His supporters, for instance, will talk about the fact that he has higher net ratings than any other Labour figure. But mainly that's to do with the fact that people don't have an opinion one way or the other. And if they do, they tend to think, well, he's probably going to be better than who we have at the moment. There is a big question, however, about the pathway that he takes back into Parliament. He would have to secure the nomination for a seat, win that by-election, and then win a leadership election. So it's by no means guaranteed. But often what you see in polls of all different types is that if a leader is unpopular, an alternative, whoever that is seen as a more preferable option. But you have to be careful what you wish for, as the Conservative Party found out on multiple occasions during their period in government.
Most definitely. Joe, briefly, if you can, just going back to the allegation that we've reached peak Farage, what about those shy Reform UK voters, the people that don't want to say out loud in public that they'll be voting for Reform but will?
Well, one of the things that we do at Delta Poll is to go beyond simply asking people who they would vote for if there were a general election tomorrow. We look at the underlying data and the support for different issues and different politicians, and we're confident that if there are shy Reform voters, we're modelling them in a sufficient manner. And of course, people may say, oh, well, maybe it's 1 or 2%, but yes, perhaps it is 1 or 2%, and that could make the difference in individual constituencies, particularly if there's a five-way tie. But it's not going to make the difference between Reform being on 30% and Reform being on 50%. The SDP were on more than 50% in the early 1980s, and 9 years later they were losing a by-election to the monster-raving Looney Party. So things change a lot.
Joe, great to see you again. Thank you so much for your time. We'll catch up soon. Joe Twyman is the founder of Delta Poll.